Hi, welcome back to my art channel. I'm Jason Walcott. Today's video is all about studio safety. Unfortunately, in the art world and on the internet, there's a lot of misinformation that creates unnecessary fear for artists who are just starting out. So today, I'm going to share some safety tips for you from the studio and clear up any misconceptions you might have about which materials are safe to use and which need to be used with caution. So, let's have a closer look. So welcome back, everyone. I'm glad to be with you again. And today, like I said in the intro, we're going to talk about studio safety, which maybe isn't as exciting as some of the other videos I've done, but I do feel that it's very important. And to give you some tips of how to stay safe in the studio and the materials you'll use and how to dispose of things in a safe manner, because that's very important. Now, most of this is going to apply to oil painters and a little bit for pastel artists. A lot of this is not an issue if you paint with acrylics or watercolor, really, because those mediums are pretty benign. Not that oil isn't, but you don't have a few of the safety precautions that you need to take with oil painting and pastels. So that's the two mediums that I'll basically be discussing today in terms of studio safety. So let's get started. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to clear up a myth. And that myth is that cadmium colors are highly toxic. That is a big myth, and I'm here to bust it. There's been a lot of fear mongering on the internet about it, and the truth is that while cadmium is a heavy metal, that's true, and it would be toxic to you in large amounts, the pigment that is in cadmium colors, this is cadmium yellow light, cadmium red light, the cadmium that's in these pigments is really, the pigment is really a cadmium salt. It's a compound that contains cadmium, but there's not enough soluble cadmium in these pigments to give you, enough to be toxic, like absorbing through your skin or inhaling it or something like that if you're just using the paints themselves. The only way that you could get cadmium poisoning from these, you would literally have to eat the whole tube of paint and then do that like several times. And, who's going to do that, right? Nobody. So, the one precaution that you do want to take is you don't obviously want to ingest it. So if you're using cadmium colors and you stop to, have a coffee break or grab a sandwich or whatever, just make sure you wash your hands really thoroughly. And the other thing is you don't want to inhale it, which is referring to the dry pigment. So I would avoid using cadmium in a dry pigment form, like making your own paints, or using it like in an airbrush where you're going to have the vapor from the airbrush in the air and you could breathe it. Those two things you want to be real careful with. But just plain old standard oil painting, the paint's out on your palette, a little bit gets on your hands, you're going to be perfectly fine. There just, like I said, there just isn't enough soluble cadmium in these pigments really to cause any toxic problems. It's just like, think of it like, we eat salt, right? Table salt. And salt is a compound that's made up of sodium, which is a metal, and chlorine, which is an extremely poisonous gas. And if you break it down into those two elements, then you have a problem. But nobody's ever said, don't eat salt because there's chlorine in it, right? It's kind of the same idea. So, like I said, as long as you wash your hands real thoroughly and make sure you don't ever breathe the dry pigment or use it in an airbrush and anything like that, you will be fine. So moving on to that same idea, a great white that I use and a lot of artists use is lead white. Now again, lead is a very toxic heavy metal. You do need to be careful with it. But again, a little common sense goes a long way. There's no reason to freak out. If you don't want to use lead, you don't have to. Titanium white is a beautiful white that works really well. I use it sometimes myself for a lot of things. But some artists swear by lead white. And so if you want to try it and you turn out to love it, then you just want to use basically the same precautions I already mentioned. Don't sand it. Don't, sand any surface you painted with lead white. Don't use the dried pigment in a powder form. And make sure that you always wash your hands really thoroughly when you're painting if you're going to stop to eat or drink anything. But lead particles are too large to absorb through the skin, so they won't do that. And they don't give off any fumes like from the paint. It does comes up from the paint, so that's not a danger either. So again, continuing along that same line, one of the things that I use in my studio that I highly recommend is a barrier cream. And my favorite is this one that's called Gloves in a Bottle. And this will just take care of any, lingering doubt as to, worrying about things being absorbed through your skin or anything like that. And again, not so much the pigments, but this is more for the thinner. You don't want this, because the thinners like the Gamsol that I'm going to show you and turpentine and things like that, those can absorb through the skin, and you don't want to be obviously getting that in your system. So this Gloves in a Bottle is an artist's barrier cream that seals the skin and keeps that stuff out. And not only does it do that, it when you get paint on your hands, it makes it easier to clean up. So the paint washes off more easily and doesn't stain your hands. Now this also relates to pastel artists, because I find this Gloves in a Bottle it's also meant to be moisturizing as well as a barrier cream. And one of the things that, if you use pastels, especially the really high quality good ones, these pastels are basically dried pigment in stick form with just enough binder to hold them together. So, this, when you are working with pastels, that dried pigment comes off on your hands. You can see that, and that's dry. Now that behaves, when you're painting with pastels, that behaves just like talcum powder. So that will suck all the oil right out of your skin, and you'll end up with dry, chapped hands if you use pastels a lot. So that Gloves in a Bottle goes a really long way to preventing that. It's really great stuff for pastel artists as well as oil painters. Now, when you're done painting, then the product that I really recommend for cleanup is this Artist's Master Soap. This is really great stuff. You can see here it's a dark green in color. You can buy this probably at your local art supply store. They definitely have it online at like Blick, Jerry's Artorama, places like that. Again, it's called the Masters Artist Soap. And it's also got little flecks of pumice in it. So it really gets in there and gets all the paint and gunk out of your, the grooves in your fingerprints and all that stuff. So when you're done painting, if you've used this and you've used this and washed really thoroughly, then that should take care of anything that's on your hands. And what I'll sometimes do if I've been painting for a long time and I have a lot of paint on my hands and on my fingernails, I went and bought a cheap toothbrush. So you can use a toothbrush to scrub onto the soap bar and then just scrub underneath your fingernails to make sure that you get everything. And as long as you wash and clean real thoroughly, then you should be just fine with no problems. So Now the next thing I want to discuss is when you paint with oils, you're going to need to use thinners. Some kind of thinner to clean your brush or mix with your paint, and sometimes thinner to if you're making a medium. The standard artist medium is linseed oil, 1/3 linseed oil, 1/3 Damar varnish, and 1/3 turpentine, which is what I use. Now this is what I use for my general cleaner and thinner. It's Gamsol, made by Gamblin. This is truly odorless. A lot of the stuff that smells bad in thinners is what's bad for you. So they have greatly reduced the toxicity level of this by making it odorless. That said, you still don't want to be breathing it, in a closed room. So when you use your thinner, make sure you use plenty of ventilation. Have a fan in the window, have a fan in the doorway. Just keep the air moving. Don't use it in a closed room where the air isn't circulating. And you want to use this, like I said, in small amounts to thin your paint down at the beginning of a painting. And you want to use this in your brush tank to clean your brushes. Don't use this for mediums, because if you're making the standard medium with Damar varnish, they're not really compatible. So for that, you're going to need genuine 100% gum spirits of turpentine. Now this, you definitely want to use caution. You definitely want to use lots of ventilation, and you want to just use it in tiny, tiny little amounts. The only thing that I use this for is to mix my medium. That's it. I don't clean my brushes with it. I don't mix it with my paint. I only use it to make my medium. And you definitely want to get the really good high quality stuff. Do not, I repeat, do not go and buy turpentine from the hardware store like Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that. That stuff is nasty. It's toxic. It's horrible. Don't even get near it. This artist grade turpentine, there's two that I recommend. The first one is this Best Test quality, Best Clean Artist's Gum Spirits of Turpentine. It's got the pine branch on the front. You can get this. I got this at a Utrecht store before they all turned into Blix. But you can also order this online. The other one that I highly recommend is this Diamond G Forest products. They're based in Georgia, so it is a U.S. made product. They make it the old-fashioned way from Georgia pine. And this is 100% pure. A good quality turpentine, as you can see from this jar, should be absolutely clear and look like water. If it's brown or yellow, don't even get near it, because that means it's got all kinds of stuff in it that is definitely toxic. As I said again, always make sure if you're using this you're mixing a medium, if you want to try that. Lots and lots of ventilation. One thing you can do that I decided I wanted to make the investment, because it is expensive. You can invest in a professional artist's quality air filter, which you can see up on the screen here. This is an Aller Air. It's called an AirTube, made by Aller Air. I got mine at Jerry's Artorama. And it's a great filter because it's designed specifically for artists. So not only does it filter out particulate matter like pastel dust and stuff like that, it's designed to filter out volatile organic compounds. So it'll get rid of the turpentine fumes, it'll get rid of the thinner fumes, because it's got an activated charcoal filter in it. They do cost about $600 to $700. And then the filters, which need to be replaced about every 2 years, cost $60 to $80 to replace the filters. So it is an investment, but it's one that I choose to make because it works really, really well, and it really gets rid of everything. Like smells are gone in just a couple minutes. Now, for your brush cleaning tank, to clean your oil brushes in, you don't have to get a big giant one like this because these metal ones are expensive, but they make ones like this in smaller sizes. They also make glass ones with screw-on lids. But the main thing is you want to get one that seals really well. And like this one has a rubber gasket around the seal. It's the one I use. So you can see that when you press that and then lock that down, it seals that really well. So when it's closed, no fumes are escaping from the thinner jar. Now, oil-based or oil paint, petroleum-based thinners like Gamsol, which is what's in here. Another one you can use if you don't want to buy Gamsol, because this is the most expensive. You can use Turpenoid. That's a good brand as well. And it does have a very, very, very slight odor to it. But it's not very noticeable. But Gamsol is the best. It's my favorite. But the interesting thing about these thinners like this for oil paint is it doesn't actually dissolve the oil or the pigment. It just thins it. So when you clean your brush in this tank, what'll happen if you leave it sit for a long time is all the oil and pigment solids will settle out to the bottom, and the layer of thinner on top will be clear again. So then you can pour it off and reuse it. So there's no need to, keep getting rid of the thinner. I mean, over time, slowly, even with this open for a few minutes just to clean your brushes, it will evaporate and you'll need to add more. Do not dump this down the sink. You don't want this going into the drains. You don't want it going into the ocean. Please don't do that. The best way to get rid of your used thinner or the sludge at the bottom after you pour off the clear thinner at the top is to get one of these paint containers from Home Depot. They just cost a few cents with a tight fitting lid. Pour the sludge in here and then drop it off at your local hazmat or household waste material collection center. They will take stuff like that. So that's the best way to get rid of it. Please don't throw it out in the trash because you're contaminating the environment if you do that. So the next thing I want to discuss, and this is important, is what to do with your oily rags. Now, if you're painting, you'll generally need to keep wiping your paintbrush on a rag periodically. So you'll get these rags that are, caked with oil and oil paint. Now, these are a fire hazard. If you get a bunch of oily rags or rags soaked with linseed oil that are compressed like this in a container, and they sit like that and they pile up and pile up, that can spontaneously combust because the oil that's the drying process of the oil creates heat, and if you have those insulated layers in there like that, it can get hot enough that these will actually start to burn on their own. And you want to be real careful about that, not to leave oily rags in a container. So if I'm painting for the day and I use a rag up, I'll lay it out flat like this over something so it's kind of airing out. And then the best way to get rid of these at the end of the day, there's two options. If you want to go the easy, inexpensive option, which is what I do, just take a biodegradable plastic bag and put your rags in the bag and then soak it with water until the water covers the rags, then tie the bag off and throw it in the trash. Because as long as it's covered with the water, it'll prevent that spontaneous combustion from happening. Linseed oil itself, the oil itself that paints are made from, is completely non-toxic. So it is biodegradable, and like I said, it's totally non-toxic. I do need to clear that up. It's exactly the same thing as flaxseed oil. It comes from, linen is made from flax, and so it's linseed oil. It's the same thing as flaxseed oil supplements that people take. So the oil itself is completely non-toxic. You don't need to worry about that. But it will, like I said, if your rags are soaked with it, it will combust if there's no ventilation around them. The other thing you can do if you want to invest, they run about $50, is you can get one of these cans, and then you just keep the can in your studio, and you have a layer of water in it at the bottom, and you put your rags in there as you're painting, and then at the end of the day, every day, you need to empty it out. So you still need to figure out a way, to dispose of those wet rags at the end of the day. But that is definitely a danger. You want to be real careful with that. Blue Ridge Oil Colors, which is a paint that's made here in the USA. They make really great paint. About a year ago, I think it was September of 2015, they suffered a catastrophic fire in their workshop because somebody who worked there forgot to put the lid on the oil drum that they were storing their oily rags in, and bang, the whole thing burned down. So you have to be real careful about disposing of your oily rags that way. So that, I think, covers most of it. This is the basic studio issues that you want to be concerned about if you're painting with oils or using pastels. One more thing, if I didn't touch on it, the pastels create dust as you're using them, so that's a good reason to have a filter. The one thing you never want to do is blow on a pastel painting. Put it up on your easel with a piece of paper or something underneath it to catch the dust as it falls. And then what you can do is when you're done, usually pastel artists take their paper down to a board. Just take that board outside and tap on the back a couple of times to loosen any loose pastels. Don't ever blow on it, because that launches the dust into the air, and then you're going to breathe it, which is not good. And it's not good to breathe any kind of powder, even if it's something benign like flour, flour dust in the air. You don't want to be breathing powders into your lungs. So that's another great reason to invest in a filter. So like I said, I think that about covers everything for studio safety that you need to be concerned about. So I hope that this was helpful to you and that you got some good tips from it. And feel free to shoot me any questions in the comments if I didn't answer any questions you have about studio safety. But I thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care. Thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and click on that subscribe button so you won't miss the next video. And why not spread the joy? Be sure to share my videos on your favorite social media. Don't forget to head on over to my website, walcottfineart.com, where you can see my art, read my blog, or when you join my newsletter list, you can win free art. Every month, I'll choose a lucky winner for my email list, and that person will receive a mini original oil painting. There's a chance to win every month, so be sure to sign up today so you don't miss out. Plus, you'll get my fun newsletter. See you next time!